So, when you think of global politics, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's probably wars, right? Wars, treaties, borders, maybe trade deals. But today, in this explainer, we're going to flip that idea on its head. We're unpacking how the actual environment, the earth, the water, the air, evolved from this localized, kind of secondary concern into literally the central theme of global politics. We'll be diving deep into Chapter 6, Environment and Natural Resources, and exploring how the very planet we stand on has become the ultimate geopolitical battleground.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with number 1, expanding contemporary world politics. 2, the global environmental crisis. 3, managing the global commons. 4, the North versus South divide. And we'll wrap up with 5, geopolitics of resource wars.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Expanding Contemporary World Politics, Redefining the Global Arena. So we have to start by asking a really foundational question. What actually falls within the scope of world politics today? Like we said earlier, we usually think of state power and military strategy. But honestly, we have to ask ourselves if issues like extreme poverty, raging epidemics, and total environmental degradation shouldn't also be right there center stage. Historically, sure, it was easy to just limit global politics to foreign policy. But think about it. Governments are ultimately responsible for keeping their people alive and well. If an epidemic strikes, or if a massive, severe drought completely wipes out your country's agricultural capacity, well, that threatens the stability of the state just as much as an invading army would. Because governments have to manage these massive crises, they absolutely fall within the modern scope of world politics.
I absolutely love this quote from the chapter. Listen to this. Politics in forests, politics in water, politics in atmosphere. What is not political then? It just perfectly captures this huge paradigm shift we're seeing. Because governments are tasked with controlling natural resources, the environment is undeniably political. Literally, every time a forest is cut down and local communities are displaced, or coastal waters are polluted, or a river is dammed upstream, those are massive political decisions. The atmosphere and the oceans aren't just the background scenery of human history anymore. They are the main characters of international negotiation and conflict.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Global Environmental Crisis, a Planet Under Pressure. You really have to see the sheer scale of this disaster. This is the Aral Sea. What happened here is that toxic waters entirely destroyed the local fishing and shipping industries, literally forcing thousands of people to flee their homes. What used to be this thriving, massive body of water has been reduced to cracked, barren earth with these eerie, abandoned ships just rusting away in the sand. And to make matters worse, the rising salt concentrations in whatever soil is left have severely crippled crop yields for the people who actually tried to stay behind. It's devastating. There's this really dark joke among the locals there. They say, if everyone who'd come to study the Aral had brought a bucket of water, the sea would be full by now. It's funny, but it really highlights a very real, deep frustration. The global community is incredibly good at forming committees, you know? We conduct studies, we measure the decline, but we are far less effective at actually reversing the damage and implementing real solutions on the ground.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about saving some trees. It is literally about human survival. Look at these staggering numbers from the UN Development Program. Over 663 million people lack safe drinking water. 2.4 billion are without basic sanitation. And the so what of all that? The resulting death toll is over 3 million children annually. 3 million. That is a staggering geopolitical failure. Combine that with the fact that our cultivable land is barely expanding while our existing lands are losing their fertility, and we are looking at a very severe multi-front crisis.
If we look at the timeline here, we can clearly trace how the awareness of this crisis rapidly accelerated into a full-blown global political movement. So, in the 1960s, these issues finally started taking on a real political character. Then by 1972, the Club of Rome dramatically highlighted the potential depletion of Earth's resources with their book Limits to Growth. Around that same time, you had these severe droughts in Africa turning prime cropland into barren earth, which created the devastating reality of environmental refugees. All of this momentum ultimately snowballed into the 1992 Earth Summit, which firmly, permanently cemented the environment right at the center stage of global politics. Okay, moving right along to Section 3, Managing the Global Commons, Shared Rights and Duties. So, think of village communities, say, in India, that over centuries of mutual understanding have perfectly defined everyone's rights and responsibilities over shared pasture lands, right? That's the essence of common property resources. But on a global scale, things get a lot more complicated. because of factors like rapid privatization, massive agricultural intensification, and population growth. These common properties are shrinking fast in both size and quality. And here's the real kicker. When no single country owns the resource, like the atmosphere or outer space or the open ocean, who is actually responsible for fixing it? And that incredibly tricky question leads us directly into Section 4, the North versus South divide, differing perspectives on responsibility. At the very core of global environmental policy, there is a deep, fundamental divide. On one side, you have the developed North. They advocate for equal protection measures across the board, arguing that, hey, the environmental crisis is a shared threat happening right now, so every nation should be held to the exact same uniform standards. But on the flip side, the developing countries of the South point to the historical context. They argue that much of the ecological mess we're in today is the direct result of the industrial development of the North over the past century. So, to the South, it seems completely unfair to slap identical restrictions on developing economies that are literally just trying to lift their populations out of poverty today. So, how do we bridge that massive gap? Diplomats rely on this crucial principle called common but differentiated responsibilities. It basically acknowledges that, yes, absolutely, we all share the responsibility to protect the planet. That's the common part of the phrase. But it also integrates the differentiated part, recognizing that different states have vastly different capabilities and historical impacts. It's essentially a pragmatic, though still highly debated, compromise designed to get everyone to the negotiating table without completely stunting the economic growth of the developing world. Finally, let's look at what happens when things break down in Section 5. Geopolitics of resource wars, the threat of future conflict. As resources like freshwater rapidly dwindle, the competition between countries, for instance, an upstream nation versus a downstream nation sharing the exact same river, could very easily escalate into violent conflict. And we aren't just talking about your standard trade disputes here. When one country builds a massive dam upstream, physically restricting the flow of life-sustaining freshwater to their neighbor downstream, that is an existential threat. These increasing scarcities of freshwater point to a very, very dark possibility that the defining conflicts of the 21st century might not be fought over political ideology at all, but over basic human sustenance. This cartoon really hits the nail on the head. Look at the trajectory we're on. We are rapidly approaching an era where essential everyday resources like water are treated with the exact same fierce, cutthroat geopolitical competition as crude oil. Just as nations have historically fought literal wars over oil reserves to fuel their economies, we are heading towards an era where nations might engage in zero-sum battles just to secure clean drinking water. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this absolutely crucial question from the chapter. How can states pursue economic development without causing further damage to the global environment? It's like a giant puzzle, and it's perhaps the most serious challenge humanity faces today. Is it actually possible to pursue vital economic development, to pull billions of people out of poverty, and to grow our global industries, all while stopping the destruction of the global commons? The answer to that question will literally define the future of world politics. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep asking these big questions, and I'll see you next time.